Okay, so I just want to point out I'm going to repaint these lines. You see the yellow lines in this photo here. Now, for those of you that are fairly new to the channel, this was already done, but then I had to tweak this for some reason, and then I repainted the center of it, but I didn't paint it up until now. Basically, I want to repaint it. So I'm going to use the airbrush, and then I mixed some yellow, but I made it quite faded. Like the yellow, some of the yellow when I first did, this is about the third time now, I think. Three times I think I painted this in one way or another. And the reason why I like to do that too is like, notice like, okay, for example, like even the windsock that I have is not faded like that. Okay, it's not. Like the real world is never consistent. That's one of the things that we do sometimes. We tend to overlook the reality of the real world to the model railroad. Like the model railroads that we build and so on, they're almost like the Bedford House story, everything's perfect, right? Everything's opaque in color and perfect, but it's not like that. Everything is faded and weathered. Everything is. Even the foliage, the asphalt here, paint, locomotives, like it's all. So sometimes we try to play that game of, well, it doesn't look like that. Well, actually it does look like that. So, but the model railroads don't. And so one of the key fundamentals that I apply when I paint model railroads or dioramas is like I add a lot of white to all the color. I desaturate the color. You'll find that in the the military model world right now. There's been a trend, the Spanish trend they call it, where they make everything oversaturated, and then they do it in Photoshop, and you see it because there's social media, right? But they don't. I mean, unless you see the model live, it's different. But there is this oversaturation trend with the younger generation of painters, and I get it. It looks like it has a great impact, but they grew up into social media, though I didn't. So when you see it live, it's different, right? Like this layout looks much better live than it does on social media because I don't oversaturate the photography. So people are maybe indoctrinated by oversaturated photos and thumbnails, but when you desaturate your colors, it looks far more realistic, like the real world, in my experience and opinion. But anyway, I'm going to load this up, and like I say, it's thin paint, very high pressure, high IPA content, which reduces the overspray. So I don't have to worry about getting overspray on the diorama or the layout in this case. But I can get in really close and cut the yellow in, which I'll show you, okay? Okay, so I've loaded up some very thin paint, and I don't want to cover it like bright yellow. Like, remember, I want some of the gray to show through because it translates to a more weathered illusion. That's one of the characteristics of thin paint that we fail to take advantage of, like by letting other colors play through the color that we spray on top. And I can vary the brightness and tone of it too, see? I can go really bright, like I'll go lightly first, and then I'll wait a second and it's already dry. It's already dry almost because of the IPA. And then you can think about, well, maybe it'll be a little bit darker in the center. So that's what I'm going to do is I'm going to go all the way down, and even if the other parts of it, like here, are a bit different, it doesn't matter because they repaint these lines oftentimes, and maybe they just painted the center. There's just so much paint. I mean, there's so many anomalies in the real world that we forget to apply in the model world because we're in a perfect world. Like when we're building a model railroad, we're not affected by one-to-one physics and logistics like a company would in the real world. because the modeler has, you know, the little tin of paint, you know, the perfect track, the brand new locomotive, and then we get kind of caught up in this fantasy of this is how it should look, when in fact it doesn't look like that at all. Okay? One of the advantages to acrylic paint, especially to me in this case, is I can demask right away. Voila. So, you know, you can see how that works, right? So, I mean, I have to say that there's a little bit of seepage, which is fine. It looks like weathering, and the reason for that is because for some reason the humidity is really high right now, and tape won't stick to anything. But that's okay, because this is a good subject to do that in those kind of conditions, because there's a lot of weathering on here, and I really like this. When I first did this, it was too clean and new, and it just didn't fit, you know, the theme that I was after. But now I like it because there's a lot of variation in it when you look at it. And I could even put a little bit of a light wash on there, like, you know, Vallejo with a bit of wet on wet or just water, just to tone that down a little bit and reconcile it with the outer patterns of this restriction zone here, because this is the actual main line. And this is here for a reason, so that people don't park there, right? Okay.